Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a pure 12 build for the Arcane Archer in Baldur's Gate 3, one of the newest subclasses added in patch 8. The Arcane Archer is really strong, even from an early game, because it gets banishing arrows, which lets you take somebody out of the fight, and all the other abilities are also quite strong as well. Now for our fighting style that we're taking at level 1, I would recommend grabbing the archery option here, as this gives a +2 to ranged attacks. Since we'll be doing a lot of those, you could also use defense. I really like that one as well. And as for stat spreads, now, since we'll be using our ranged weapon most of the time, there's actually an item in Act 1, the Club of Hill Giant Strength, we can use with the Titan String Bow to get a very high strength number. You could also use strength potions as well. That's why I'm going to be dumping our strength here. You could go with strength if you really wanted to, but since we're going to be using dexterity often, I think this is the best way to roll with this. You can take it to 17, use the hags here if you want. Otherwise, we'll roll with, I like to have 16 dexterity, 16 constitution, 14 intelligence so that we can land our arrows, although you could swap that out if you want to take your constitution and put it into intelligence. And if you're not using the hags here, we'll put those last points into wisdom just for the saves, as they're very important. Level 2, we get action surge. You guys know how good that is. Use it often. It's really strong. But level 3 gives us our subclass here. Now, the best cantrip in the game, one of them is guidance. I'd recommend grabbing that. True strike sucks, and light, it's okay, I guess. If you wanted to set up some other types of gear, you could use the light cantrip, as the Arcane Archer can actually do a bit of crowd control with radiating orbs if you don't have anyone else in your team doing that. But our best arcane shot is the Banishing Arrow. This is going to potentially banish the target to the Feywild. This is the only one that doesn't get any extra bonus damage, and it's because this is so powerful. Banishing also uses a charisma save, which is like the stat that most enemies don't have much of, so you're likely to land this. We're going to be using it often. Now, if you're in the early game, like the Bow of the Banshee actually applies the Frightened off of Piercing Arrow, so that's actually a really good choice if you're in the early game. Although my personal preference is the Seeking Arrow, because this will allow you to hit enemies that you sometimes have no way of actually hitting, and the Shadow Arrow, which is nice because it can blind the enemy, which early game, it gives your team advantage on attack rolls, and they're less likely to hit your team. Although if you wanted Bursting Arrow, this is a good choice as well. It does an area of effect damage. Again, Piercing Arrow doesn't get any benefits from like Sharpshooter, but it can apply certain bow abilities, like again, Bow of Banshee. Level 4 gives us our first feat. I like the alert feat for the +5 to our initiative. This just makes it so that we're going to be going first. Alternatively, you can go with a dexterity increase, which will help out with the overall your ranged attack rolls and your armor class. Level 5 gives us the extra attack. Great, it's awesome. We're going to get another one at level 11. We do get another feat at level 6, which then we can take the alert feat, and by this point we get into Act 2, where it's going to be very important. Level 7 gives us our magic arrow. Your ranged attacks are considered magical to overcome resistances. I mean, if you're using like an uncommon or higher bow, a green bow, you'd likely already be getting this, so that's one thing. But curving shot's pretty cool. If you miss with a ranged weapon attack, you can use a bonus action to attack the next closest target with the same attack. And one thing that's actually funny with this, I've done this in the past, but if you put cold damage onto your bow by using something like the Drake Throat Glaive, and you make the shot hit another target, it'll actually make the surface appear underneath a large area of effect. So that's actually a kind of cool little benefit of that, is that it can do some pretty silly stuff like that. At this level, it's either Bursting Arrow or your Piercing Arrow. I'm going to go with Piercing Arrow, as you can sometimes use this to set up quite a bit of damage. Level 8 gives us another feat here, and by this point we can go with the ability score improvement, but another good choice is actually going with Sharpshooter. This will give you a +10 to damage, -5 to your attack rolls, which is really good. It doesn't work on a lot of the arrows, but it's going to be a big boost to your overall damage, which is nice. Also, if you want to use crossbows, the Crossbow Expert lets you attack at close range, which is also good, especially with bows like Herald, which is pretty powerful, but we're going to go with Sharpshooter here just to get the big damage numbers out there. Level 9 gives us Indomitable. Whenever you fail a saving throw, you can re-roll that. It's really good. Level 10 gives us another arcane shot choice, and I'd recommend grabbing Bursting Arrow at this point. The other ones are okay, but I think that this is just good because of the large area of effect that you can do with Bursting Arrow. Level 11, extra attack improved, meaning we can do 3 attacks. Pretty good stuff. And for the final level here, we're going to get one more feat. At this point, I really like the Crossbow Expert with like the Herald Crossbow or the Giant Breaker. Those are 2 good choices. We could also go with an ability score improvement to max out our dexterity there. And there's also an option of going with something like the Huff feat if you want a bit more health, or going with an increase to our constitution, but I like the max out dexterity route. Now the best part about the Arcane Archer is they have so many great options for gear, even all the way through the game. Now, the Helmet of Arcane Acuity is actually really good here because we can use an arrow of many targets, get a +10 to our spell save DC, and that's going to make sure that we land our abilities here like our Banishing Shot. You don't have to use this though. If you're in the early game, the haste helmet's going to be a great option as well. You can, even if you want to be a little silly, you could use the Hat of Storm Scion's power here, and then take something like if you got the Drake Throat Glaive and put thunder damage on your bow, it gives you the same effects as this hat, so you can kind of spread it if you have multiple players playing. The Mask of Soul Perception is good too for the +2 to attack rolls if you really don't have a good shot of hitting the target. I like the Deathstalker Mantle or the Cloak Protection, depending on if you're Dirge or not. Now for the armor, this is a late game one, the Ballast Armor. I would actually recommend, if you were to use this, to then use also like Darkness Arrows, and then use something like the Seal Watcher Helmet so you're not blinded, so that you can get in close and get those extra damage points off. This is actually pretty crazy. I'm not going to use it though, because not everyone uses this item, and I know it's a very powerful one. The Adamantine Scale Mail is going to be one of your best early game options. You can get the heavy armor version. It's really just dependent on what you prefer having. There's also the Armor of Persistence we can use, and the Armor of Agility gives us the highest possible armor class of 25 there. So those are some other good options as well. You do have heavy armor proficiency, so the Armor of Persistence is a good choice as well, but you do get a lower armor class by using that. Now for gloves, I actually like the Luminous Gloves. If you don't have your Light Cleric using these, whenever you deal radiant damage, they get 2 turns of Radiating Orbs, which is great because we can use the Callous Glow Ring, which does 2 points of radiant damage when illuminated. So you can actually use something like the Gaunter Mail Bow, which illuminates yourself, and then we'll do 2 points of radiant damage, which will proc that. And then you could also use the Luminous Armor to give even further Radiating Orbs off in the enemies. It's actually a pretty crazy defensive focus build, but I didn't want to go too hard on that. And we also got the Boots of Stormy Clamor, which when we apply the Radiating Orbs, will also apply Reverberation. You could also go with something like the Evasive Shoes if you wanted to, or even like the Helldust Boots and even Disintegrating Nightwalkers, depending on where you're at in the game. Now for rings, as mentioned, the Callous Glow Ring is a good choice, but I also like the Caustic Band for additional 2 points of acid on all of our attacks. However, there's another really fun combo that we can do here with the Snowburst Ring, and then take your someone else on your team, give them the Drake Throat Glaive, and then make sure that you have your bow out. I see people online giving a lot of misinformation about this, but you can actually, you don't have to drop the weapon, you can just pull out and pretend like you're doing a ranged weapon attack. Just make sure it's on your back whenever you're going to do this. And you're going to come with your character here, and they're going to get the Draconic Elemental Age. We're going to put the cold version on our character here, and the reason why is whenever we have this, we now have an additional 1d4 cold on our attacks, which is going to proc the Snowburst Ring, so enemies will end up slipping and falling. You could also change this to something a little bit different if you wanted, like to not slip. The Helldust Boots or Disintegrating Nightwalkers work well. But yeah, these kind of combine together to create difficult terrain and reduce enemy attack rolls. We'll also be banishing targets, so we're the ultimate support attacker, which is actually pretty crazy. Now for our main weapon. If you're not using the, if you don't have a strength potion, use the Club of Hill Giant Strength. Otherwise, I like the Knife of the Undermountain Kings. This will reroll, reduce the number you need to hit a critical hit, and you also reroll damage die whenever you're doing an attack. And it also has a Shadow Blade ability. This is one of the best weapons to get. And also Viconia's Walking Fortress and the Titan String Bow. This will add additional damage equal to your strength modifier. The reason I'm doing that is because I've used a strength potion here, taking it up to a +8, which is a nice boost to the damage. So that's a good choice. You can use the Herald crossbow. There's also going with the Hellfire hand crossbow and Firestoker in the offhand. The Fabricated Arbalest is also a pretty fun option if you wanted to go all in on the Radiating Orb style. And the Gaunter Mail Bow is good too. There's also the Bow with a Banshee short bow, which is pretty decent. But those, I actually really like going with the Titan String Bow. It's just a very powerful weapon. And for our first turn in combat, my recommendation is to try to get your spell save DC up. I really like Bursting Arrow just because you can hit so many targets at once with this. So we're going to go ahead just starting off with one of these here. And we'll get the crit. We actually applied some Radiating Orbs on a few targets, or I guess just one target there. But that's pretty solid because we want to get as much crowd control out there as possible. We're also making those ice surfaces too, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, I think there's a big issue with my character. I can't actually do an arrow many targets for whatever unfortunate reason, because that would be best. It would apply Radiating Orbs and ice surfaces on everybody, but there's unfortunately mods that end up breaking this so often. It's kind of frustrating, and I'm not sure. I've downloaded, reinstalled the game, and nothing seems to fix this. So we can go with the inferior piercing arrow here and hit multiple targets at once. So I'm just going to go ahead, fire away there. We create the ice surface under this one, so we don't want to move again from here. But the great thing about piercing arrows, you can sometimes hit multiple targets at a time. So I'm just going to blast away with that again. It was enough to take out another target and give them even further Radiating Orbs. So yeah, don't be afraid to use your piercing arrow because it is actually pretty strong. I don't want this target over here, so I'm actually just going to use Banishing Arrow on them because I want them gone really bad. 90% chance. It took them out in one shot. That was kind of good. You typically, when you're fighting with the Arcane Archer, you want to go after anyone that's like a spellcaster. Like, I would love to hit this target, but I don't want to risk slipping on the ice. I kind of set myself up in a poor situation here. So I'm just going to blast away with another piercing shot. It's not really great to burn through all your arcane shots, but you do get them back on short rest, so that's something to keep in mind. I was safe from the ice. That was great. Since you sometimes don't actually make the check from that ice, it's actually only if you do if the enemy's a little bit further away from you, you can sometimes walk off it without actually getting hit like you saw there. And I'm going to take a banishing arrow and try to take out this target here because I just want them gone really badly. So I'm just going to eat the opportunity attack because it's worth getting rid of them for. We only have a 72% chance of landing that, but we banished them. That was good. We created a nice surface there as well. It's kind of one of the funny things about this is we got all that going on. Now, flourishes are pretty decent if you can, I guess we'll just do that. Why not? Bonus action, knocked him off balance, a little bit of radiating orbs. We do have action surge, however, and that's kind of the big focus of this. Also, if you're playing as a high half-elf, you can get Booming Blade, which is a really big boost to your overall damage there. I'm just going to go ahead with just a Shadow Arrow to potentially blind this target will be nice since they don't have spells, so don't really care too much. We got them taken out anyways. This target here is knocked off balance and everything, so I don't really care too much about them. I want to get these targets back in the back line, so I'm going to do another... Yeah, it didn't hit. I'll just try another Banishing Arrow there. 42% chance of hitting, and we were lucky there. That was actually really good. So there's 2 patches of ice with banished targets. What's funny about it is once they get unbanished, they can potentially end up slipping and falling. Now you can continue to go away with banishing shots. Typically you just want to remove the spellcaster and then blind the rest of them so your teammates can pick them off. Removing anyone with a crowd control spell is nice just because it's just one less target for you guys to worry about. So yeah, use up your shots as quickly as possible. It's kind of my recommendations because you're going to have so many of them in the late game. You're likely going to use, I used all of mine up here. Not common that happens, but yeah, we have a couple banished targets there, so we just have to wait for them to come back. Not really much we can do because they're going to be banished for a couple turns, and then they come back here. We could banish them again, or we can just go ahead with shooting at them. This will be more than enough. We actually got a critical miss, so we can use Curving Shot here, and this is going to end up slipping around and going to the next target. And it did reverberation damage and the radiant damage on that target. This is enough to take them out, so that was perfect. And then we'll just finish this target off like that. So there is a pure 12 Arcane Archer in Baldur's Gate 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll catch you all in the next video.